What's up, guys? It is time for another Q&A on May 25th, 2019. So last week didn't do one because I was out of town, but this week we are back. So let's see what kind of questions we have. All right, so we'll start over here. All right. Who do you blame for a competitor showing up with gyno? See some coaches that clients have very obvious lumps. I mean, I don't know what you mean by obvious. I think that would, guess we would have to define obvious. The problem is with some people is they do get it during puberty, and it's there. So unless they get it cut out, which everyone says will just get it cut out, but it's not always just that simple, especially if they can't get their insurance to cover it. Maybe they're not going to drop the whatever $5,000 or whatever it costs to do it. So it's not necessarily just that simple for a lot of people. Now obviously it is self-inflicted by most people, but that's not always the case. Again, like myself, I had gyno as a teenager, 12 years old, 13 years old. For the most part went away. Now, I've never had it removed, but even just being prescribed TRT, it can flare up when estrogen's within, normal physiological ranges. So some people, unfortunately, are just very sensitive in that regard. I don't know. I don't know who you would blame. I know there are some really atrocious cases out there with like giant lumps and stuff. Yeah, they should probably get it taken care of. But I guess we'd have to define that a little better. Another question says, does high dose of tren cause pancake-like nipples with gyno? Well, a lot of people blame prolactin there, and actually 19 nors, so your trenbolone and nandrolone, they don't actually raise prolactin. Even then, you're not going to get hard granular tissue without the presence of estrogen. And how people react to high levels or super physiological levels of estrogen varies widely. There's people that can walk around 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times out of range with no problems, and others that they're just very sensitive, or they had pre-existing gyno glands, and they, I'm sure gyno gland is the right word, but and they'll have easy flare-ups. So again, very person dependent there, but no, you're not going to get it from, you will not get the hard granular tissue from the actual prolactin, and again, it doesn't raise prolactin anyhow. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I'd have to see a picture of a pancake nipple. I'm not exactly sure what the pancake nipple is referring to specifically, but no, you're not going to get the actual granular tissue is not going to be present. And this is where it gets complicated too, is just because some of these things don't aromatize. There are other receptors that can go on, that can bind. There are, even though they might not raise prolactin, like they may bind to progesterone receptor. Again, progesterone and prolactin are not the same thing. And there's a lot of other little binding that goes on. It's not quite as cut and dry as people think, raise estrogen, lower estrogen. So that's where it gets a little dicey, and where treatment can get a little more difficult, or management, I guess you could say. But in a nutshell, if you're controlling estrogen, then the actual occurrence of the hard granular lumps will not occur. Okay, so any good resources to learn programming for powerlifting or peaking for meets? I get this question about bodybuilding references too, and I really suck at this question because I pulled from just so many different sources and my own research and experiences and experiments, and I'm a really bad person to ask when it comes to, hey, do you know what book should I read, or what article should I read? It's like, I really don't have anything specific, and the same goes for powerlifting. So sorry, I'm probably not the person to ask about that, or even about the bodybuilding, just because, again, I pulled from so many different areas. There's not like a, hey, yeah, you should definitely check this out. I learned so much from that. Nothing even pops in mind. It's just been pulled from so many different pieces of literature, or whatever you would want to call it. Psychology question: has there ever been a limiting belief that you've had since you were a child that impacted you to be an online coach, or did you develop them throughout life? Limiting beliefs can be things like labels that you see yourself, like I'm independent, or I'm introverted, or I'm an athlete, or bad ones like perhaps I'm not disciplined, or I'm weak. Okay. I've kind of talked about this before, like personality types, and there's not a belief that I would say, yeah, I have this, so I should do this. Now, inherently, you are going to be drawn towards certain things because you might have these beliefs or personality types to begin with. So, but it wasn't like I thought about it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I premeditated. I didn't think, oh, I'm this, so I should do this. It's just that I was drawn towards certain things because of my personality types, and it wasn't a conscious thing, I guess you could say. It was more of an unconscious decision, and more of an unconscious path that that led me there. So that would be my answer to that. If you want to know about my actual personality type, then we can talk about that some other time, but I'm complicated. Okay. At which time in your workout should you start drinking your intra shake? So a couple things, like if there's people that go into the gym fasted, like they haven't had anything and they are just using an intra shake, whether it's like amino acids or hydrolyzed protein or whatever with some kind of carbohydrate, they might start sipping it right before they start training to get those things circulating. You know, they digest or require basically minimal to no digestion anyhow. So they might start a little earlier, whereas somebody else may just, as they start doing their warm-up sets or start their work sets, they can start their intra-workout drink. And then the other determining factor might be like the size of it. You know, if somebody's drinking 25 carbs versus 150 carbs, you know, the 150 carb shake is going to be huge, probably going to have to dilute it a lot. So they're probably going to want to start sipping it right at the beginning or right before they go in. So they have plenty of time to sip on it. So those would kind of be the determining factors, whether you start it at the, you know, beforehand or right at the beginning, or if you can wait a little bit into the workout. Okay. Any more shows in sight for the year, or what is your plans? What are your plans moving forward? Well, ultimately, I would like to move up to the heavyweight class. That's my plan. So after this year, I didn't plan on competing for at least a couple years. It's going to take more than a couple years realistically to be where I want to be. Probably 3, 4. I don't necessarily have to get on stage at 225, but eventually. But I would like to be competitive in that class. You know, not put on 2 pounds of muscle and compete again. It's not my goal. So it's going to take time for sure. And that's very open-ended. So it takes however long it takes. I'm not that worried about it. So that's really the goal. That is it. One more. All right. What's one thing or resource that kept you on track at the beginning of your fitness journey? Well, when I started, it was a little bit different landscape. We didn't really have the social media thing. There was no Instagram. There was Facebook, but it wasn't like Facebook like it is now, where the fitness, how it's evolved into what the fitness side of things, it wasn't there. Forums, I ventured on the forums. I frequented certain ones. I talked a lot on there. I had a screen name, posted all the time, had journals going, that kind of stuff. So I guess you call it like a form of blogging. Basically, had a log. Kept up with that very regularly. That's probably the biggest thing for me when I started bodybuilding, is I was pretty religious with that. And there were a lot of people that were also in the same boat that ran those kind of logs and talked, and that's how we communicated. It wasn't Facebook or Instagram, even though those came shortly after. But that's probably the best resource. Now, that's not really super relevant now. A lot of people don't use them anymore. And it is a little harder to keep that kind of like intimate, like, hey, this is my log, follow along type of thing. Now, where you can do blogs and stuff and have a blog site and things like that, and your own little URL for that, but it's not the same because there's so much going on Facebook and things, when you post, it eventually gets scrolled down. If there's a photo, it'll be in your photo album, but it's not like, people aren't going back and referring to it really that often. Instagram's always moving, you know what I mean? So it's different in that regard. But yeah, that's what I did, but that's also how things have changed quite a bit. So now, at this point, I'm so engrossed in this, and I have been for such a long time that, because obviously it's what I do. I compete, very serious with that. I coach, I do seminars, like literally every single thing in my life for 98% of my life revolves around this in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, it's not like hard to stay involved. If anything, someone in my shoes would be more susceptible to just getting burnt out. Now, I've, ways around that, but again, I don't really have a good suggestion for a lot of newer people. I think that it's really a double-edged sword, because the social media thing can be very daunting. You see people, they look a certain way, but is it really, how true is that? Is that I think people follow the wrong individuals. I think that's a lot of the issue. If follow someone that's very transparent, if they follow someone that doesn't use the sensationalism, that's very realistic, that is, I'm basically describing myself, but puts out information, but is very realistic with things, is very true and transparent, and talks about, hey, I did this and this and this, and it was hard, or whatever. Not like sensationalizing everything like so many fitness celebrities and so many big IG followings and stuff like that, where it's just not. If that motivates you, that's fine, but I feel like that's a very false reality. And even for those people, even for the people that are actually on the account, that's not even really their reality, because they fluff it up and they make it look a certain way. So again, for me personally, and if I were starting now, I would try to follow those transparent individuals that put out good information, that are realistic. So I have a good idea of, hey, this is what's actually going on. This is what I actually need to do. And I would find that helpful. So that's my take. All right, guys, thank you. And we'll do it again next week.